Shalom, everyone. Today is Monday, November the 28th, 2022. We are talking about Parashat Vayetzei. We're not going to get very far in the Parsha because we're going to really deal with the opening scene. The opening scene is where Jacob is running away and he alights on a certain place and he has a dream. I'm going to pull up the text right away, and we'll get right into it. Here we go. So, Vayetzei Yaakov miber Shava vayelech Haran. I'm just going to move it over here. Yaakov went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. Vayifga bamakom. He encountered a certain place. Vayalen sham. He had to spend the night there. Kivaha shemesh, for the sun had come in. Vayikach me'avnei hamakom, vayasem merashotav. He took from the stones of the place, and he set it at his head, and he lay down in that place. Vayishkav b'makom ha'u, vayachalom, and he dreamt. V'hinei, oh, there is a sulam mutzav arza. Virosho magia shamayma, a ladder / ramp, and of course I'm going to devote this class to understanding what this is, was set up on the earth. Virosho magia shamayma, its top reaching the heavens. And here, vine malache Elohim olim v'yordim bo, messengers of God were going up and down on it. And that's our text for today. That's where we're going to at least start, and immediately when you hear the text, you conjure an image in your mind, and this our class today is going to be as much about the content of this image as well as how we go about thinking in of biblical stories. Because it's such a powerful idea. But we have a question here. Go ahead, Nanette. You're muted. Unmute.
Muted.
Unmute yourself, Nanette. What's going on in this moment is that there is this event that's happening to him. He's running away. Why he's running away is, of course, because his brother's going to kill him. Why is his brother going to kill him? Because he stole his brother's birthright and blessing. And all of that we saw in last week's Parsha, which, of course, attests to the fact that he is, a highly, there's a highly flawed character, and there's a deep moral problem here. That's not our concern. Aside from the moral problem that we have with him, the story is moving forward because of the promise that God has made to Abraham, which has not yet been fulfilled, and that is that there's going to be a people and there's going to be a land. That people will inherit the land. Well, the people has not yet been formed, and the blessing and that promise is now in a new vessel, namely Jacob, and again we're having a problem with the vessel not being able at this point to fulfill the promise, and we have zeroed in, under a microscope now, frame by frame, to his life, and my concern here is really more of imagery than it is of character at this point. My concern here is, okay, so he's having this dream, and of all the things that he could have dreamed of, he dreams of a sulam. And what is this sulam, and what does it signify? That's really my concern here. And the secondary concern is, how does the visual impact our interpretation and really shape our interpretation? one of the themes that I've been wrestling with, both in this class and in my commentaries with my colleagues, and also in sermons, is, we get to an interpretation, and we become so committed to the way we see things that the minute we hear something different, either it shocks us, or we say, oh my goodness, I've never thought of that before. And that, of course, is the way to think about it, or that may be one of the ways to think about it. And I think our tendency with the Bible, especially with the Bible, but I think it applies to almost everything that we interact with on a kind of artistic basis, that, we see certain things, we watch movies, we look at art, we listen to music, and we have certain kinds of interpretations of these things that we are fixed on. And the minute that someone, is trying to, shape or it gives us a kind of contrary interpretation, it conflicts with our priors, so to speak. And so here I want to conflict with our priors in the sense that the overwhelming visual image of the Sulam is, of course, the ladder. That is to say, the ladder, not the former, but the LADD. Okay. All right. So it's a problem. The word Sulam only occurs in this place in the Bible, and there's a way to do this. I have here. I hope that I'm going to just do some internet magic here. I've put all the hyperlinks in my text. So this is the text of the thing here. Is it coming up on your screen?
No.
No. Okay, then forget that. Okay. So the concordance of the
Rabbi,
yes.
try control and click before you give up.
Control and click next time. Okay. So take my word for it that this is the only occurrence of the word Sulam in the Bible, and therefore it's very hard to come up with an interpretation of that when we so what the Bible dictionaries say as follows. Okay, and here I need some modern Hebrew. This is from the Klein dictionary. Klein is an important dictionary. So he says Sulam, the plural is Sulamot, Sulamim also, and he's writing a dictionary of Hebrew in general, a hapax legomenon in the Bible. That word, the term hapax legomenon, means it's the only occurrence of this word in the Bible. It's nice, fancy, makes you, if you say that, you'll be very, very smart. Okay. And he is conjecturing here, and this concurs with other lexicographers, that it's from the word salal. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in modern Hebrew, salal lesolel is to pave.
Right.
Solel boneh is the major construction company in Israel. Solel, pavers, boneh, builders, okay? But here he's saying that solel is to lift up. And I think we have to add that solel is something to do with path. In Arabic, sulam is a ladder. In Syriac, sebalta and semalta are words that indicate the same thing. And he is saying here that you have what is not uncommon, where, let's say, in the word semalta, the letters mem and lamed get reversed. So you get sulam and semel all the same. In modern Hebrew, the word sulam and the root sulam occurs in music. Silem, he modulated the music. Hislim, escalated. And today, when we talk about the escalation of the situation, the escalation of a situation. Sorry, I'm going to ask in a second to comment. The escalation of a situation is haslama. So, for example, presently in Israel, there is, there have been a few terror events. Most recently, last week, 2 people were killed in a bombing. and then
Right.
there's retaliation. And then if it gets intensified in modern Hebrew, that's a haslama. Haslama is an escalation. I didn't look up the word for escalator. What's the word for escalator in modern Hebrew? This is where I need a lot. You can unmute it. Tell me what, or we'll come back to you in a second. Okay, so but laslim is all of that is irrelevant to the context. It's just interesting that modern Hebrew took a word that occurs only this place in the Bible and makes it into what we think of as the ladder or the moving stairway. In the Mishnah, Sulam already occurs as a ladder. Okay, and here.
So one of the ways to say escalator is exactly what you said. You said moving stairway. So one of the ways is madregot naot.
So okay,
moving stairs.
All right. So in modern Hebrew, the stairs are madregot. Okay, not a sulam.
Right.
And it's very interesting how Hebrew went in one direction. Modern Hebrew and Mishnaic Hebrew. I'm guessing that Mishnaic Hebrew, took it and thought of it as a ladder and not as a stairway. And modern Hebrew simply took it as a ladder, and there's no debate about that. So here's a quote from the Mishnah: "Sulam hamitzri ein lo chazaka." It has to do with the propriety of certain kinds of objects that you find or that occur. And there's a difference between an Egyptian ladder and a Tyrian ladder, Sulam hamitzri and Sulam tzori. These are different ladders. I guess the Egyptian ladder is more like a step stool, and a Tyrian ladder is more like a stool that we have in home view. So Helene, you said press control. Let's see if it happens. No, control click. No. How about that? Is it going it?
No.
Is it blank screen yet? Do you see the Home Depot ladders?
No.
No.
Fine. Okay. Well, we just gotta do it this way then. Old-fashioned way. Okay.
By the way, sulam in music is also means scale.
Right. Okay. So here is, can you see the Home Depot page now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So duh, here are different ladders, and you have the painted links. So our experience is basically between step ladders and extension ladders, but it wouldn't surprise you that there are all sorts of ladders now, gorilla ladders. I never knew what a gorilla ladder is, but gorilla ladder is, you can put it on different, here, this is a great picture because it's a ladder on madregot, okay, on a stairway. All right, very, very cool. All right, so my point is that we have taken the meaning of sulam and we have affixed it to the idea of ladder, but that is not necessarily the case. Let's just go on here in my commentary. But here, what I want to show you is that again, the idea of something so powerful in a visual image affects our way of interpreting it. And we'll go to just a second, I'm sorry. William Blake here, beautiful picture of. So here is William Blake's depiction of the angels, okay? And you have seen illustrated Bibles, I'm sure, and they have all sorts of things. I'm going to scroll through different pictures here. This is simply Jacob's dream. So in this painting, the ladder or platform is not depicted here. It's simply light. Here, this is the Monheim Town Hall. I don't have a date on this. this is in the Luther Bible, 16th century. You can see here that in this engraving, it's pretty clear how he is interpreting what a ladder is, a sulam is. It's a wooden ladder. Now, those of us who have been on a ladder understand that a ladder, an extension ladder, needs to be leaning against something in order for it to be stable. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. Okay. Our late lamented friend Charlie Mandel had a terrible accident when trying to remove something from the side of his house. He was well into his 90s, and he fell from his ladder, that it wasn't properly fastened. And for those of us who do, household chores and repairs, always make sure that you have your ladder very stable. Of course, this is a dream, and it, anything can happen in a dream. And of course, it's God, and of course, it's angels. Okay, but is the dream surreal in the sense that the ladder is hanging on to nothing, or is it real in the sense that it concords with physics? Susie, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange things in this picture. First of all, he's in a desert, and this picture is not a desert. There's a windmill over here.
Yes.
See my cursor. There's another person over. There's other people in the picture. So that those are all very strange things.
Exactly, and I didn't really pay too much attention to what's going on here. There's this there is what looks like a city also, and there's trees, and there's a flock there.
But that's all part of his, in my interpretation of that picture, that's all part of the dream.
Oh,
the part on the bottom is desert with the stone, and everything above, like that line or above the first step of the ladder, is part of the dream. That's the way I see it.
Okay, very good. Okay, not to get too immersed in it, which of course we could do a whole class on the artistic depictions of Jacob's dream here. So here's back to this one. Here's another one. This is Bath Abbey. This looks a little more modern, or a little more, maybe it's and it's coming from a Christian source. And it's interesting how this artist sculpture depicts the ladder as a ladder, like and the ladder goes to heaven. And here is American Book of Bible Stories. So this is this is kind of what you would expect, right? I mean, I grew up with something like this in my illustrator, and this is some nice sculpture at Abilene Christian University, and we could literally go into great depth on that subject. The point is that when we get an interpretation, I'm thinking this is the same conversation that I would have on the film, the 10 Commandments. So what, as brilliant and as wonderful as the film was, when it was made and remains, the damage that it does is that it kind of freezes your imagination into one kind of depiction of a scene, when in fact there are many, many ways that we can interpret it. Nanette, you have your hand up, and so you'll have to unmute. Go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So the Sulam, though, has a number of different interpretations. Okay, and here we go back to this. I'm going to share with you here. This is Professor Nachum Sarna here. In his commentary, he says as follows: the Hebrew term Sulam, rendered stairway, is unique in the Bible. Its etymology is uncertain. It may derive from salah, we've seen that already, to cast up a mound, or may be connected with Akkadian similtu, steps. Sulam could therefore be a ladder or a stairway ramp. The inspirational stimulus for the image seems to be the ladder of ascent to heaven, known from Egyptian and Hittite sources, in which both divinities and the souls of the dead are provided with ladders to enable them to ascend from the netherworld to the abodes of men and God. So, it's interesting what Sarna is doing. He's saying, look, let's place the story in the context of the ancient Near East. And in the ancient Near East, in Egypt and Mesopotamia, Hittite sources, we see this thing going on. We see what seems to be, the connection between heaven and earth through a device such as a sulam. Another explanation is the representational reality lies in the Babylonian ziggurat, the temple tower, and that we already saw here. So what the Torah is doing here is maybe saying, okay, I'm going to play with your imagination. Don't think of it as the wooden extension ladder, fireman's ladder. Don't think of it as a step ladder. Think of it as either this ramp of a ziggurat or this kind of device that connects heaven and earth, because those are present already in ancient Near Eastern experience. So the ziggurat, the edifice was equipped with an external stairway or ramp linking each stage of the tower with the next until its top reached the sky. It should be noted, though, that in Jacob's dream, the Sulam, whatever it be, does not function as a channel of communication between man and God. So what he's saying here is then that the Sulam, whatever it is, if it's the ramp or a ladder, it's not a kind of channel here. And we're gonna stop that and maybe challenge that in a second. But here I want to just show you a couple of things. And here this would be the some scenes of ziggurats. These are actual pictures of ziggurats that have been that exist archaeologically from the ancient world. All you need to do is type ziggurat in and Google it, and you'll get a dozen of these. And this is what he's dreaming of. So here is a ziggurat, and if I click this, let's see what happens. I got to sign in. Forget that. Okay. So I'm just going to then expand it. Let's see if that happens. Never mind. Now I'm going to have problems. So go to the next one. Okay. So you get the point.
Rabbi, when you put your cursor on the picture, you can zoom it.
I understand. So the point is that there are structures in antiquity that kind of look like they have a ramp and a platform, and that to someone who is below that, it would look like it is reaching to heaven, even though the ladder image, as you saw, was basically vertical, okay? And this is how our imagination is working. We have either the vertical or the ramp, okay? Why is this interesting? I'll tell you why. Because when you look at these depictions of a ziggurat, they remind me of another edifice, another kind of thing. And that is, they remind me of a, well, here we'll go in a second. But wait, if it could possibly be a ramp, then why not the obvious choice for a ramp, i.e. the altar? What does the altar look like? All right, I have my hyperlink, but I'm not going to hyperlink to that. Or did you? I didn't. Am I zooming? I didn't see. You're not seeing that. Okay, so here is my my ramp.
I'm not seeing that.
Oh, now you're seeing it. Okay. So this is a top view of an altar, and this actually is very cool. I'm going to make this the whole screen. Okay. Now, do you see the altar? Top view of the altar. Yeah. Okay. So here's the ramp. The ramp. I'm going to make it big now. Whoa. Okay. You're going up the ramp, and over the altar. This you can turn it around. Okay. Look at that. All right. That's what the altar is. It's earth underneath a grating. Okay. All right. And you go up the altar on a ramp, and you burn your animals over blazing fire. These are the coals here, blazing fire, and this is at the center of the temple. Isn't that cool? Wait, there's more. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so there are more depictions of this that are absolutely fascinating. Here is one. I'm going to pull this up now, and this is, I showed you this movie last year, and here's basically a couple, just a quick scene out of this movie. It's called Agadat Kurban. This frozen moment here is a picture of the priests taking vessels with animal parts in the courtyard of the temple. You can see that one priest is holding out a leg. I've spared you from the gory slaughter and sectioning. Okay, here I'll give you 30 seconds of this. The priests are going up the ramp. Okay, stop there. Priests are going up and down the ramp to the altar top. Okay, and what are they doing? On top of the altar, they're putting the pieces of the sacrifice. This is really important. Okay, I'll give you another 10 seconds. There's nice music. And it goes up in flames. And they're throwing the blood against the altar. And there's blood, and there's more, and all of that. Okay, so that's 5 seconds of an animated film from Israel called Agadat Kurban, in which they're depicting the sacrifice. And it occurred to me as I was watching this, I was saying, wait a minute. You know, Olim v'yordim, they're going up and down. Well, that's what happened in the temple. That's what happened at the altar. The altar is not going to heaven, but symbolically, it is supposed to be the nexus point between heaven and earth. And the malachim are not malachim, but in fact, they are Kohanim. And so I thought, wow, I'm so brilliant. This is amazing. What a great interpretation. Is there anybody else that thought of this? And of course, there is, okay? And it's in the Midrash. And why? So it's the Midrash, Breshit Rabbah, has a rarely quoted interpretation of this, which I then have to kind of ask, well, why? But here's what the Midrash says. Tani bar kapara. And this, I love this little line. Let chalam she'en lo pitaron. Thank you to all those, who say there's no dream without an interpretation. Okay, you have a dream, and it's got to mean something. Okay, let chalom she'en lo pitaron is probably an aphorism in Aramaic. There's no dream without it. So there he's going. V'hinei sulam. There was a sulam. Ze ha-kevesh. The word is kevesh, not keves. It's very hard, because I'm so used to seeing the word keves, which means a sheep, okay? But kevesh is the ramp to the altar, what we just saw, okay? Mutzav arza, set up on earth, ze mizbeach. That is the altar. Because in Exodus 20, it says, Mizbach Adama Taseli. So what Bar Kapara is doing says, look, Arza, Adama, same thing. The altar is placed on earth. That you saw there, what was, I think, really interesting in that 3D reproduction is that it's a huge square. It's like 40 foot, it's a square, 40 square feet. The altar, you're not really thinking like the table is the altar, so it's like really small, but this is huge, okay? Huge, space, and it's covering earth, because on the underneath the grating it's like your barbecue. It's all the ash and all the drippings and all the coals and everything, and you would think, and this probably occurred, that it had to be maintained properly. after all, I mean, those of you who barbecue regularly, you know that you just can't keep adding charcoal to your barbecue. At a certain point, you have to empty it out, right? So he's saying, look, the altar is sitting on earth. And exactly as the Torah says, Mizbach Adamata Seli, an altar of soil you are to make for me. You are to sacrifice upon it your offerings up, your shalom offerings, your sheep, your oxen, every place where I cause my name to recall, I will come to you and bless you. V'rosho magia shamayim. We're now back in Genesis. Its top is reaching the heavens. So in Genesis, what he dreams of is Sulam mutzav arza. The Sulam is placed on earth, and its head, its top, reaches the heavens. And what does the Midrash say? Bar Kapara says, Elu hakorbanot. These are the sacrifices. Sherechan ola la shamayim. The scent of them, the odor, the smoke, I guess, also goes to heaven. So it's not that the top of the ladder is in heaven, it's that the odor, the smoke goes to heaven, which makes perfect sense. V'nei malachei Elohim, here messengers of God, and he says, Elu Kohanim Gdolim. These are the high priests, okay? So my only quibble with Bar Kapara would be there's only one high priest, okay? And there are many, many angels in the dream. So here I would have to take a look at all the manuscripts and see, are there, if the various manuscript traditions, take out the word Gdolim. I would just say, like we just saw, it's Kohanim. The Kohanim are going up and down the ramp. And that makes perfect sense. That this is his dream. His dream is a dream of service. Olim v'yordim bo, they were going up and down. She'em olim v'yordim ba kevesh, they were going up and down the ramp. What does this mean? Okay, so I think this is really fascinating. And here again, I go back to my meta theme, which is that, I want to say all these years, you think of the story and you think, oh, it's such a beautiful, you have this image of the angels, flying, up the ladder. They're going up, and they're going up and down. And we rabbis, we've gotten so creative with this image. We give so many sermons about it. And I can remember one, a person who it's a wedding talk or it's a funeral talk. Same thing. It's out of the same playbook, which is, this person, he was rooted in reality, but he dreamed in the heavens. That it's such a wonder. I mean, I don't want to be cliche, but and I use the word trope. It's a beautiful trope for allegorizing a person, right? A person who is like a realist, but also an idealist. Okay. I'm rooted in reality, but my head is in the clouds, okay? And these are very powerful ideas, and they're powerful homiletical, sermonic, ethical teachings that you should be rooted in the ground. And the whole idea of the angels going up and down. So we're also very committed to the interpretation that, well, and you've heard me say this many times, the Bible's very concerned about boundaries. And this is a boundary moment, and Jacob is really, on the verge of leaving Canaan, even though he's very much within Canaan. And another parallel rabbinic tradition does is it sees in the angels that represent all of the different nations of the world. That the nations of the world are coming, and that as he is leaving the land, he has to be accompanied by some kind of divine presence. And that's what the dream is. And we can become very committed to that interpretation. And I don't even begin in terms of mystical interpretations. And the word Sulam is, of course, highly charged with mystical meaning, because the Sulam itself depicts rungs of the ladder on which we ascend to elevate ourselves spiritually to higher spiritual states. Again, it's a very powerful idea, but it's a very problematic idea, because if you say to people, I'm on a different madrega, it sets up a hierarchy that allows people who consider themselves on a higher madrega to look down at people who are on a lower madrega. I don't like to use that imagery in reflecting on religious life. I prefer the one-dimensional cartographic image, which is that everybody's on a different path. We hope that everybody's trying to get to the destination that is the same, but one person's route to that destination may not be similar or exactly the same as another person's. I see, Nanette, you have your hand up and you have another hand. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so Rabbi, you had said something, a word, 5 minutes ago that was really interesting. You used the word service. Is it, if we're talking about dreams or you know, fabrication, whatever, is it possible that Jacob is somehow imagining he's going into service? Because after all, look what's going to happen. He's going to be in Laban's house for like, you know, 14 years.
It's not service to Laban, it's service to God. And that's the point. And that this, we'll read the text clearly here. He is saying that this place is going to be the place of service of God. Okay. And that means that his dream of angels going up and down is a dream of worship. They're worshiping. And that what he is going to reproduce in his life is something that is going to be the locality of worship. Look, let's get back into his head here. And I'm pushing this interpretation because I feel it's evidently cogent and also quite simple, which is to say, here's a guy, he's got nothing, okay, zero. And he's on a journey. And the journey is a very perilous journey. He's running away from his brother, wants to kill him, and he's running to something unknown. And in this journey, he knows that he possesses this promise that he's going to be a head of a nation. So he wants protection. And God is now presenting to him a dream. And we, the readers, have we have the purview of his dream. We get to see this, and therefore we have to try to decipher this. So one way to decipher is all the ways that I've explained it. But another way is, well, the simplest way, which is that this is going to be the temple. And at the temple, they're going to do this. And they're going to do this with sacrifices. I'm going to stop there and go to John. Go ahead.
Well, you see a real evolution, I think, in Jacob. In the beginning, there's nothing really that would lead one to think he had a sense of artistry and artistic soul or any deep thoughts at all. And all of a sudden, with this dream, he becomes a much more elevated soul.
That's fascinating, and so the question then is, again, the travel itself is a metaphor for transformation of an individual's life. Part of the reason why we enjoy travel so much is that we learn things and we experience things, and when we go to a place that we've never been to before, we come back charged and changed and educated. And that's not only in terms of content, but that could be obviously in the spiritual dimension of a life. Go ahead, Nanette. And then
So Rabbi, are you saying if Jacob is going to give service to Hashem, is it because he was so evil? He went along with the mother, deceiving the father.
Not at all. Again, God has promised, God has given a big promise here. I'm going to, zoom out and say, what's the program? The project here is getting a people. And despite the flaws in all of these characters, the project has to continue. And it's because of God's overwhelming loyalty, mostly to Abraham, but we're going to see that each of these characters, each of the patriarchs, have redeeming qualities themselves, obviously. So go ahead, Ilana, you said.
About the word Sulam.
Okay.
So in Arabic, Salam is from Shalom, peace.
No, different. That's Sheen. This is Seen.
No, this is,
Okay.
no. They write it differently in their language.
Okay.
Salam is, I'm just translating, Salam is Shalom.
Okay.
Wait, so there is a modern word, Haslama. Haslama. Hey Samech Lamed Mem Hey. Haslama, meaning making peace, making
Really?
agreement. Yeah, we hear it a lot these days between the Palestinians and the Israelis trying to do Haslama. So it's spelled with a Samech, like Sulam. And the connection is because when we go up the Sulam, we improve and we do better.
Okay.
Towards doing Shalom.
Okay, so this is the price of admission here. Yeah, it's a lovely poetic interpretation of the word. Of course, it would never occur to me, in my ear to connect salam and shalom.
Yeah, you know this song.
No,
but you know the song Shalom.
Yeah, but salam is later, the letter that's later in the alphabet. Okay, good
and
enough.
Also going up on the Sulam.
Very nice.
Going up in mitzvot.
Very
right?
nice.
Going up and down, going up in mitzvot.
Very
That's why we do the Hanukkah, starting with one and going up like on a ladder.
Good. I just saw Bob. You shared the ladder of prayer, of course, and these are I can't look at that right now, but what I want to do is I want to I know that some of you like to bake challahs, and there is a whole menu of chalot that are shaped as ladders, right? Are you familiar with this? The ladder challah, I'm here. The ones are more on the left, on the right, I'm sorry. Vayetzei, you can make a different challah for every parsha. This is the Vayetzei challah, okay? Cool. All right. So we want to just go back to this idea. And so if I'm saying to you, I'm giving you a different interpretation of this, that it's not just a ladder with angels on an extension, fireman's ladder. What's going on here? So what does this mean? God appears to Jacob in a dream, and it is a dream, literally, of a grand altar. And in the dream, angels / priests are going up and down on the altar ramp. And in the dream, Jacob gets God's promise of the land and God's promise of protection. And he wakes up with the idea that he's literally at the temple and at the nexus of heaven and earth, which is what the altar is. But he has a problem. He's running away from the land, from his birthplace, from his father's household. He has nothing, and I make that intentional. Artzecha, moladetcha, beit avicha, like Lech Lecha. This is the inverse of Lech Lecha. Abraham leaves his land, birthplace, father's household to get to Canaan. And here, Yaakov essentially is doing the same thing in reverse, leaving his land, birthplace, and father's household. And what does he have? Nothing. He has no animal, and he's not going to look in the thicket for a ram like his grandfather. Okay, look, in the Torah, it's just a turn of the scroll backwards, back to the Akedah. It's like 4 columns back, and we have, well, maybe more. We have a story of someone on a mountaintop, or someone on a where God is saying something, and he has to do something in response to that. And Abraham is looking for an animal to sacrifice. In my interpretation, as following a certain tradition, he's avoiding sacrificing his son, so he wants to find another substitute, namely the ram. So Jacob doesn't do any of this. He's not looking to sacrifice anything. You would think that when he gets a dream, that God is speaking to him and standing over him in a dream, as it were, he would kind of get up and say, oh my goodness. So he does say, there's God in this place, and he would make an altar, but he doesn't. He doesn't make an altar because he's in a hurry, all right? And he has got to get out of there. He's running for his life. But in the biggest puzzle I have on the story, and unfortunately I don't have a good solution, he doesn't have anything, but he's got a little cruse of oil. He's got a little bottle of extra virgin olive oil. Okay, why would he have olive oil? Okay, and here it's like, I'm just going to pull things out of the sky, which is, olive oil, plentiful. Olive oil is a multi-use substance. It's both a detergent and a food. It's cooking, it's lighting, it's blah, 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 blah. Okay, who knows? He's got oil, okay? All he has is oil. Rather than make a sacrifice with no fire, no animal, no knife, no wood, no time, he takes his oil and he consecrates a stone and he makes a symbolic gesture to designate a future altar. When he comes back, he will actually build an altar there. And then, rather than offering a sacrifice, he makes a pledge, a tithe pledge, which would include, obviously, the promise of sacrifices and abundance of sacrifices, okay? So this morning at Minyan, Barry Mail mentioned to me, he said, this is the founding of the first synagogue, right? And the first synagogue comes with a pledge. I thought that was very, very clever, okay. All right. Not only will I build an altar, he says, but I promise that this will be an entire structure dedicated to serving you. I can't do it now. I'm running. I have nothing, but I'll be back. And my descendants will be back. Okay? And this is what he says. Yekatz Yaakov mishnato vayomer. Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. God is in this place, and I did not know it. Vayira, vayomar. He was awestruck. How inspiring is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and that is the gate of heaven. So you can see here, this is my interpretation here, that there's being layered on this image, the idea of an altar, the idea that the altar itself is the connection between heaven and earth, and the altar is the locus on earth of the analogous gate to heaven. So you see then in your imagination now, as you depict this scene, he is now time traveling to the moment that there is a temple, that there is an altar, and that above the altar is Shar Shemayim, okay? Vayeshkem Yaakov baboker, he gets up early in the morning, Vayikach et ha'even, asher sam mirashotav, Vayasem otam matzeva, vayisok shemen al rosha. He started early, he took the stone instead of his head, he set it up as a standing pillar, poured oil on top of it. Vayikra et shem hamakom ahu Betel. He calls it Betel. V'ulam luz shem ha'ir larishana. Lovely little footnote that the Torah puts in there that this place has a previous name. Vayidar Yaakov neder. Jacob vowed a vow saying, if God will be with me, ushmarani baderech, and watches me on the way, gives me food, lechem, bread to eat, and clothing to wear, and it takes me back to my father's household, and God will be my God. This place the stone that I've set up as a pillar, Beit Elohim, will be the house of God. And everything that he gives me, aser asrenu lach, I shall tithe to you. On the one hand, this sounds like such an audacious oath, right? It's saying, you give me and I'll give back to you, okay? You read it and you go like, well, it's got a lot of chutzpah, Yaakov. We could be very critical of him. On the other hand, and I see your hand up there, John, and I'll turn to you in a second. On the other hand, there's something very, very religious and spiritual about this, which is the idea that someone who has nothing pledges something and then says, in return for your beneficence to me, I shall offer you something. Go ahead, John. Return, you have to unmute. Unmute yourself, unmute.
You said it, Jacob makes a pledge, but it has conditions. And this is a man that's always negotiating. I think I think one of the big questions in the Bible is, does Jacob change or does he stay the same? I think a man who suffers so much as he can't help but be changed. But on the other hand, there's a core, he's always bargaining.
So you definitely can read it this way, okay? And I agree with you. And I am inclined, sometimes to see him really as a tough, hardened person, and certainly later, in the story, and I'm not spoiling it for anyone, he's damaged and traumatized, and he gets his comeuppance from Laban, which is in this week's Parsha, and he loses his wife and he loses his son, and by the end of the story, your heart goes out for him. I mean, you have to be very sympathetic to him, and as much as you want to be very critical to him, he pays a huge price for this. There is audacity here, but let me pose this or present this to you in a kind of way, an alternate view, which is, I don't want to say that it's a pious view, but it's a different view. So the vision is a vision of service to God, the priestly service, where he's outside the structure, and it is an imagination. Empty-handed angels are going up and down the structure, waiting for something to offer to God, and he understands that. Not being able to offer anything himself, all he has is a promise. His promise is not, his promise is not of an offering, but of a whole building, which will be the nexus point of heaven and earth. And the point at which his descendants will make an abundance of offering, giving back to God the requisite tenth of what he gives to them. So I thought, okay, so it's hard not to think of verses like this from the Psalms. This is from Hallel. We say this on a regular basis on Rosh Chodesh and holidays. Ma'ashiv l'Adonai kol ta'mulohi alai kol yeshuot esa u'shem Adonai. How can I repay the Lord to me for all his bounty? I raise up the cup of deliverance and invoke the name of God. Anidarai l'Adonai ashalem negdana lechol amo. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all the people. Where? At the temple. Yakar be'nei Adonai mavtalecha. The death of his faithful ones is grievous in the Lord's sight. And I'm being faithful, Jacob is saying. I mean, I'm conflating a psalm and mapping it over here on this, but I'm saying that this is the religious sensibility. The religious sensibility is, you don't want me to die, God. You want me to serve you. And I'm making a promise. I don't have anything now. I am poor. I have nothing except my walking staff. And then in the psalm, it says, "O Lord, I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have undone the cords that bound me." Okay. And here, so this could be a metaphor for any person who is a supplicant, but it could be Jacob himself, who sees himself as a servant, who is the son of a woman, Rebecca, who could be also God's servant. Lecha ezbach zevach todah u'shem Adonai ekra. I will sacrifice a thank offering to you and invoke the name by your Lord. Where? At the temple, at this very spot, but I have nothing right now. Nidarai l'Adonai ashalem. Negdana lecholam. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of my people. Bechatzrot beit Adonai betochechi Yerushalayim. Hallelujah. In the courts of the house of the Lord, in the midst of others, in the midst of Jerusalem. Hallelujah. Okay. There's only one little problem here. One little problem here is that he's not in Jerusalem. He's in Bethel. Bethel is north. Jerusalem is south. Bethel is the capital of the northern kingdom. Jerusalem eventually becomes the capital of the entire kingdom. So, and here we have to be, if we had a kind of more critical view of this, if this was like a graduate class or whatever, we'd kind of take a look at this story as the story of the northern tradition, because the northern kingdom is going to establish its capital there and establish basically a temple building there. Okay, but I'm going to set that aside. I think it poses a big problem for the historical understanding of the text, but it doesn't pose a problem for the spiritual understanding of the text, which is, here's a man who's got nothing, and rather than, we have a tendency to see him sometimes as audacious and full of chutzpah and making these conditions, he's saying, look, here's my promise to you. My promise is that I'm going to come back here. And I don't take this promise lightly. I take this very seriously, because in the Bible and in all of ancient world and ancient Judaism, the oath, the promise, is something that you live and die by. And so he's saying, this is the, how the framers of the Constitution, right? We pledge our sacred honor. We who live, hundreds of years after that kind of sentiment really don't understand what that means. We make a handshake and we pledge our bond in a promise and words, but we know how deeply trivialized these things have become. But this is a hard and fast bond, and that he knows that the land has been promised to him, and he knows that he bears the promise of a numerous people. So he's going to come back. I promise you that I'll come back, and I promise you, when I have sustenance, I will be able to give to you in full repayment of what you have given to me. Okay, and I just want to conclude with a couple of thoughts here on this. I know we're over, but here. So, and there's another verse that reflects this. I'm going to skip this. As there's a whole idea: is this revelation, or is this, like Moses? It's a dream for him. God has appeared to him in distress, and he wants to reciprocate and to elicit God's presence. God's message to him is, I, the Lord, am your God, the God of Abraham, of Faratzta, you will be a great nation. I've mentioned that. I'll bring you back. It's a promise of divine protection and return. And most importantly, a promise of non-abandonment. I will not abandon you. But then it says, until I have done what I have spoken, which is a kind of way to say, a kind of a way to let everything hang in the balance. Throughout Jacob's life, then, there will be a fear of divine abandonment. Perhaps that is why God says to him, when he is ready to go down to Egypt, I will go with you, and I will come up with you. In other words, God extends the promise at the end. Leaving the land entails fear of divine abandonment, but God's promise allays that fear on both occasions. On the first occasion here, God appears to Jacob, and Jacob pledges offerings in response. On the second occasion, Jacob, in departing land, makes offerings to elicit God's response. On that occasion, God pledges to Jacob that he has nothing to fear. And when they take him back to be buried, they offer no sacrifices. They left all their sheep in Egypt. I'm going to leave it there, which is fascinating to me. But I've gone ahead of this week's Parsha. Jacob will go down to Egypt. They'll bring him back. But when they come back and bury him, there is no feasting. There is no temple. There is no nothing yet. They're in a different state altogether. They're in a state of pre-slavery. And when they are going back to bury Jacob, they're specifically told, don't take anything with you, right? You can't bring anything with you because you belong here. Pharaoh lets them out. Pharaoh's very gracious to let them out and bury him, but not too gracious, because he wants them back, because he wants them to stay there to build up his empire. Okay, so what we have here then is this great scene, and I think that the key to unlocking this is the interpretation of the Sulam. The Sulam is the altar, and if it's the ramp to the altar, I think everything makes sense. Okay, as opposed to ziggurats and ladders, extension ladders, and firemen's ladders, etc. This all makes sense if we put this in the context of worship, connection, relationship, and the fear of abandonment. Nanette, back to you.
Okay, I'll make it really fast. So you have, going along with what you're saying, I have to really hand it to God. The guy's, him or her, whatever's up there, is really Hamish to go along with this whole thing, considering what Jacob did, what he's going to do. It's amazing what God is willing to deal with. No?
I agree with you. God is we have to have a lot of appreciation for God's perseverance here. That's I guess the whole point. Go ahead, Bob.
I find your interpretation to be extremely compelling.
Thank you.
And the only thing I would add to that is that I think Yaakov also got the message from seeing the angels going up and going down.
Yes.
He needs to have tefillah. He needs to make, if you will, the tithe. And then maybe when he makes his requests later through prayer, blessings will yet come down to him.
Sure.
So that it's a very dynamic situation. Absolutely.
So there is a vein of commentary that follows that thread that this is about the dynamics of prayer. I see that in Barbanel and possibly others. Yeah, it's good. John, go ahead.
So just following up on what Nanette said and what you said, I think we have to bear in mind God is the director of the play.
Yes.
This is his show. And I think Neil Gaiman says the Torah is the Jewish myth. This is the grand myth, and God is the director.
Correct. And so, if you kind of, take that metaphor and say that here, what's being played out is I'll say one theme of the grand play is relationship. And I see this at every turn, really. You can almost analyze every story in this way, which is, I'm trying to break through to humanity. I'm trying to have a relationship with humanity. How am I going to do that? I start with this way, it doesn't work. I start with this way, it doesn't work. I'm going to have a people. The people's going to, be like a vessel of my name. It doesn't mean that I don't have a relationship with other people. It just means that this people is going to have a specific mission to bring this relationship to the world. And their relationship to the world is a human relationship. And the anthropology of that is that human beings need to do things, they need to worship. And of course they worship in certain ways, but we'll have one specific way and one specific location, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all can be, if you ask the one question, what's the theme here and what's, happening, and provide, the possibility that this whole story is a story of relationship. I think there's a lot to unlock here. Okay. Well, with that, we are back and looking forward to a wonderful week. Hope everybody had a good, I'm going to pause here.